What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another video in our course, Make.com, for people who want to make real money. And in this video, I'm going to be diving deep into how to build an automated backlink generation machine using a publicly available service called HARO, which stands for Help a Reporter Out. Now, HARO shoots you emails once a day, well, actually 3 or 4 times a day. They can be pretty overbearing with a big list of questions that journalists have developed. And journalists are basically just like shopping around for quotes. And so I've built the exact same system that I'm about to show you and then sold it to a variety of clients, anywhere from like an $800 US price point all the way up to maybe a $2,500 to $3,000 price point. As you'll see, the build is extremely simple, although the outsized impact of having something like this constantly running 24/7 is difficult to fathom. I mean, you can get backlinks in Forbes, Business Insider, Entrepreneur.com, that sort of thing. And I'm sure that vulnerabilities like this will eventually be patched, but as of my latest knowledge, you could still use this sort of system to, just take yourself to backlink heaven. That sounds like something you're interested in and you want to learn how to build a business or SEO system that generates actual leads, backlinks, or money, then this video is for you. Stay tuned and I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so if you guys are new to HARO or Help a Reporter Out, a brief rundown. This is basically like a source website that allows journalists to get sources from business thought leaders and doctors and lawyers and all these authoritative people that you usually see quoted in like a magazine or whatever. And we're just gonna build a system that takes in these requests, and then if it's relevant to us, we're gonna use AI to process it and then write an email response to the person that's requesting the source. So very simple, very straightforward from a bird's eye view, but HARO is just like such a great system. This probably isn't going to be around for a while. I received some notification, I think like a year ago, saying that they're gonna slowly start changing the way that the system works. Maybe they're gonna put it like in a portal or something like that. You can imagine how the systems that we're gonna be building for that are gonna be slightly different from the email-based system that I'm gonna show you today. But when they do that, somebody leave me a comment and then I'll build out a way to do that as well. Everything in life is automatable. Yeah, and so this is an example of one of the flows that I built up before. You'll see that a bunch of modules are everywhere. That's just because I was testing it right before this video to make sure that it worked. And this is an example of the flow that we're going to be building out. We're going to start with, previously I used a webhook, now I'm just going to use an email module. We're going to set a bunch of variables, and then we're going to use AI to do things like collect titles and then write emails. So that is what is in store. We're also going to get to use the iterator module, which is a module that I don't think I've explicitly shown or talked about until now. But it's very simple and very straightforward. You don't need to be too concerned about what we do with that. So here is the new scenario. First things first, why don't we take a look at one of these HARO emails just so we know what we're working with. Let's do HARO, and then do HARO Friday Evening Edition. So these are the emails that they're sending out, what looks like 3 times a day, Friday morning, afternoon, and evening. As you can see, it's just a massive list of queries. People are in biotech and healthcare asking for pros that, they're seeking pest control professionals and travel health experts. They want people that can talk on virtual reality and medical practice, right? There are all sorts of things. And obviously there are a ton of requests here. It looks like 93 in total. Not all of them are relevant. So we're gonna wanna develop a system that can automatically find the ones that are relevant to us and then read through the descriptions and then respond. And as you can see, this is a really long email, right? Like we're not even a quarter or a fifth of the way down. We can scroll all the way to the very bottom. And yeah, it looks like the 93, oh, actually the message was clipped, so it goes on even further than that. So I'm not gonna, open it up and read through this. It'll probably take until the end of time. Another asteroid would probably come and extinct us all before the time that I was done reading this email. But there are a couple of things that we can pick up, just pattern-wise, that'll make it really easy for us to do this. So as you see, first they start with like an index, and then they just have a bunch of one-line queries like, hey, seeking pest control professionals and travel health experts, anonymous. Or brands, what are your biggest marketing challenges in 23, blah, blah, blah. If we scroll all the way down though, you'll see that at a certain point that changes. And then there's this big list of stars, which I guess is just how they formatted the emails way back when HARO was first made. And then you'll see that they actually go longer on the specific requests. So now there's a whole, what looks like 3 or 4 paragraph section just about that first request, which is seeking pest control professionals and travel health experts. And so what we can do is we can basically parse all the titles and then extract the relevant queries just from the titles. Like let's say if I'm Nick at LeftClick and I work in operations and business consulting, I'm gonna tell the AI, hey, I just want you to extract all of the stuff about business consulting. And then we can use those titles to basically split the email into the sections that we want. So maybe starting from here down to here. And then we can just feed this section into AI. We can do some fun email parsing stuff to get the specific email record that we want, or email address that we want to send to. And then maybe we can just write something like, hey, I'm a professional at bedbugs and I'm more than happy to help. Here's a quick quote, right? In that way, it's like an automated quote generation system. Obviously, not everything that we send out is going to be 100% true. There are going to be some issues with factualness and like veracity and that sort of thing. So you do have to be careful when you're using this. But the system has generated tons of links for a variety of people. And I find that, if you don't really have the expertise that the AI thinks that you do, people just aren't really going to respond or put the link up. So very low impact in that way. I have a bunch of prompts set up here, which we're going to be drawing from, hence why I have a Google Doc window open. But why don't we start with the very first problem, which is just getting the email from our inbox. Now, you can imagine how if you're building the system for the future, like I am, we want to look at emails that are going to be coming in from now until infinity. But I can test using the Watch Emails module by right-clicking and then press choosing where to start. So I guess I have to set it up first. So I'm just going to click and let's use this account. I just know that that is going to work. My folder that I'm going to pick here, in your Gmail inbox, you have a variety of folders. This is something that most people don't realize, but there's a difference between the inbox folder, like the sent mail folder, the all mail folder, your unreads, and all that stuff. And this is just a quirk of how Gmail works. So if you're using a different email, it may be a slightly different approach for you, but I know for a fact that I just want to look at all mail that has ever entered my inbox or ever will enter my inbox. This is basically like setting up that mailhook webhook that we were doing earlier. I'm just doing it using the email module because it's a little bit easier. I would prefer to use webhooks though, because you can typically respond a lot faster. Anywho, okay, criteria, we're going to choose all emails. Sender email address, this is where you basically define the filter that you're going to use to search through emails. So if you notice, if I just type HARO in my mailbox, I got tons of these, right? HARO, 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 HARO. So odds are the email that, or the subject line that you're curious about is just going to, or the subject line that we're going to use to filter is just going to be HARO. And odds are I'll probably do pretty well. So I'm just going to filter by subject line HARO. I'll have no phrase, and then I will not mark messages as read, maximum number of results 1. Click OK, and that'll ask you where to start. Now, we want to test this on historical emails, so I've received a bunch of HARO emails, obviously. So I'm going to select the first email down here, and it's actually going to go through my whole email inbox, do the filter that I showed you, and then allow us to select where we want to begin. So why don't we do this one here, this Friday morning one. Looks like that'll give us 3 emails to test. Then I'm going to run this module. So now we're selecting that, and you can see we have a bunch of fields here. We have the date, the email ID, the size, just a bunch of shit that we don't really give a crap about. Sender, recipient, right? Text content. And text content is what we're going to use. So text content looks just like the body of our email, but it starts off with, look what we found when we analyzed over 100,000 press releases. So this looks to be just like some advertising that they're doing. And then the queries start. And you see we have the formatting that we had before with index. Then we have what looks like a hashtag and then the name of the industry, and then a bunch of titles, right? And so these titles are probably sufficient for our AI system to like automatically figure out whether or not it's relevant to us. So that's what we're going to use, and then we're going to do some fancy text parsing. One thing that you realize in make.com as you get better and better is that like a ton of the really high value operations that you can do or the workflows that you can build really just depend on your ability to use text parsing. And obviously we can use AI to do a lot of that text parsing for us, especially in like less structured data sets, when we're scraping a website or whatever, where the data isn't going to be the same every time. But you still need to have an understanding of how to do text parsing. And so, the modules and the functions that are available to us, like the split and the replace and the get, I find myself using them basically in every workflow now. So getting familiar with them, if you want to build high ROI systems, is pretty essential. Okay, anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take my own advice and I'm going to set a testing variable. So this is the only time I will ever use the set variable module on its own, and I'll just call it test text. The text that I'm going to stick in here is I'm actually just going to go through this whole email and then just copy and paste all of this in. Just because I just want a way that we can test our flow without me having to like explicitly grab an email every time. So click OK. All right, so we have the text, and then now that I've verified that this email module works, now I'm just going to start here, and then I'm going to rename this to testing text, just for my own sanity. And now every time we run this scenario, we're just going to get this as an output, which is the exact same thing as we got the first time. Now we're just not querying our own email over and over and over and over again. So assuming that that's representative of the data set, what do we do next? Well, the way that I see this working, and I know because I've developed the system, so I'm kind of cheating in that way, but the way that I see this working best is first, to save on tokens, we pass in all of the titles, and then we have AI tell us which titles are relevant to us. And then, in order to, again, to save on tokens, we pass in all the descriptions, or we pass in the relevant descriptions, and then we only have AI generate responses to the descriptions that are, of course, relevant to us. And so the way that I would do this in practice is I would set multiple variables here. And again, I always use set multiple variables over set variables because there's just no reason why you would ever just want to have one. For maintainability, you always just want to be able to jump in and add more. And then why don't I set a variable called, let's just call this like titles, I guess, right? Because we basically want to extract everything up until here. So we'll just call this titles, and then the variable value. Okay, so let me just go through this and see. This text is probably how we're going to separate the email, honestly. Let's just do that. We could obviously separate it from here all the way down to here, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to have like an extra 20 tokens or 30 tokens or something if I include the title. So I'm just going to grab the very, like the first half of this using split, and then I'm going to feed in all of the testing text here, and then I'm going to copy this long string of asterisks. And you know what? Let's just make sure that this, man, how many asterisks is this? Oh, I don't want to count this, but let's just make sure this is the same in every email. That's 5. That's 10. That's 15. That's 20. That's 25. So it looks like there are 28 asterisks. I don't know, man. I wonder if I can just test this and make sure it's the same over here. Let's paste this in. Okay, yeah, so it looks like it's finding the exact same number of asterisks. Good sanity check. That means it'll probably work on all of the emails that we want to test it on, but I'm just going to split all the titles this way. And then let me just do this as like demonstration, and then I'll show you how to get the first item. So what happens if we split the two things, then we have an array now with the first half being all of the text up until that line delimiter or whatever, and then the second half basically starts immediately after that. So the first half is everything from here on up, and then the second half is everything from here on down, basically. So that's good, that's our intended behavior, but what we want is we only want to grab the first one, and so you can do that in Make just by using get, which I've probably shown you guys 10 times by now, but I'm just going to get the first. And then I'm going to run once again, sanity check, make sure that this works, titles. We now, instead of having an array, we just have a long string, and looks like it goes down to 33, and then it stops. I don't know if that's just like Make, like having, wanting to like cut it early or whatever, as opposed to keeping going. So let me just make sure that this is, yeah, okay. So it looks like the titles that we fed in were pretty light. So there were only 33 in the testing text. So that makes sense. So it goes all the way down to 33. Looks like that other email that I got where we got 90 queries or whatever. That was sort of weird. But yeah, that looks good to me. Okay, now we're going to set descriptions. We're going to do the same thing. So we're just going to say descriptions, and then I know for a fact this is going to work because we just set it up on the first. So now I'm going to separate this and then just press run once and then get it all the way down, starting at the top, working my way down. You could obviously just like use one variable and then have an array to index it into 2, but I don't really care about that. And you know, I'd rather have like variable names like title, description. It would just be way easier. Okay, great. So yeah, looks like we got what we want. We can obviously like separate it so that it goes all the way up to here. I don't really think it's super relevant or important. When we separate the text, it'll probably be okay. But I am noticing that every description is separated with this line. So that's like a good, this is a good instructional video, sorry, on text parsing, just because it looks like help a reporter out is extremely structured in the way that they do things. All right, so now it's time to introduce AI into the process. We have a big list of titles. What are we going to do next? I'm going to go down here to OpenAI. And then I'm going to use the completions endpoint. And I have my own setup, so I don't have to go through the connection rigmarole on my own. I'm just going to use GPT-4 for now. This is probably suboptimal from a token perspective, because GPT-4 is going to charge you like 3 cents per 1,000 tokens, something like that. But you can imagine how the positive impact of getting one of these probably vastly outweighs the money that you'd spend on the tokens. Now I have my prompts set up elsewhere, so I'm just going to copy these in. And the reason I did that in this video is because these prompts took a little bit of trial and error, and I just want to make sure that the video isn't 3 hours of me just coming up with prompts. But I'll read through all of these after I'm done copying and pasting them in, just so that we all know where these prompts are coming from, and then some of my thought processes in developing them. So let's paste in this one here for user. That looks pretty good. And then let's do another one for assistant, which will be an example of the correct query that I wanted to output. All right. Last thing I'm going to do is, because I'm sort of training it here, now I'll just have the user prompt. I'll feed in the titles. For advanced settings, max tokens of 300. I think that should be okay, but let me just test and see how long this is. I'd always just use like an online word counting tool. 58 words, yeah, 300 characters is probably going to be more than enough. Maybe we can even make it shorter. Let's just do 150. Temperature, I'm going to choose a low temperature for this because I want it to be very, I want it to be as less creative as possible. All right, so what exactly do these prompts do? So the first is a system prompt that says you're a helpful, intelligent administrative assistant. This is just sort of a catch-all, and it makes it identify as something that is smart. Next up is a user prompt, and this is where you would put in information about you, because of course we're getting AI to filter these titles based off of something, so there needs to be that something that we're filtering by. So in this case, I'm saying I'm a business owner specializing in AI, marketing, software development, and design. Below is an email with a list of titles, all prepended by a number and the right bracket with a right bracket symbol. Filter them based on relevance and if the title involves the sorts of things I work with on a daily basis. If it's in my area of expertise, add it to a JSON object that returns only the list of associated titles. Don't include the company names or the number. Then I say, use the following JSON format. The following JSON format looks like this, where I have a right curly bracket with an additional space, it looks like. And then I have a variable called relevant queries. And then I have a colon, and this is just like a JSON format with a nested array. So then I have an array with element A, B, C, D, where A, B, C, D are queries of relevance. Now, when you provide it with instructions this complicated, it's usually good to give it at least one example. The number of examples that you give have to be weighed against the amount of money that you're spending per request. So I receive 3 emails like this a day. I know mathematically that means I'm probably going to be spending 10 cents or something like that per run, maybe 30 cents a day in total. If you add that up over the course of 20 business days, that's like $6. For me, that makes sense. I'm more than happy to spend $6 to have a system that's constantly responding and generating me backlinks. But for you, that might be a little bit different. And so you sort of have to, weigh this by what the perceived cost is and then what the perceived benefit is to you. The next prompt is a user prompt, and this is where I'm just going to give it a user assistant pair example. So I start off with just a giant list of titles, and I went very extensively here because I wanted it to do a good job. So I added 130 titles. I got this just from a couple of other HARO campaigns, so I copied that in. And then I tried to have it model the response format that I wanted. And so that's what we did here. Relevant queries, here are a list of the titles, which all look good. And then after that, we have another user prompt with the actual titles from the actual data. And so this is where we're going to get the list of titles that are actually relevant to us. Now, we have everything that we need to actually test this thing. So why don't I try and click run once? That looks good to me. It's running. It's GPT-4, which historically takes a little while longer than GPT 3.5 or GPT-4 Turbo. Okay, and if I go down to choices, one message, you see that we have a list of titles. And it looks like there's some weird formatting going on over here. Not really sure where that's coming from, but that might just be the person that wrote that title. Anywho, buy, build, or fix. What's best for first-time homebuyers? Nearly half of Americans have considered starting a business. What's stopping them? The importance of financial planning for a secure future. Return to office and corporate sustainability goals. Careers now, handle anxiety on new job. AI to job hunt. Cell phone repair experts need the one charging mistake that's draining your battery. I'm probably not the right fit for this one. But regardless, you see how it's pulling in a bunch of things that are significantly more relevant than, seeking somebody to help me figure out where the prostate gland is, right? Like, obviously I'm not going to be able to provide you guys information on that. Okay, so I'm gonna have this be extract relevant titles. I'm gonna call this set title and description. And let me just set this up, how to reach out to HARO queries automatically and build a backlink empire. Feeling kind of clickbaity today. So now that we have a list of relevant titles, what do we do next? Well, what we have to do next is we have to turn that list of relevant titles, basically, that we have over here into, or we have to use that to split the text that we're interested in the description side, so that we can then feed that into our AI. And the way that I did that here was I had that parse JSON module, of course, but then I had an iterator. And the way that the iterator was set up was I just dumped through all of the relevant queries. And then I used that to do a bunch of text formatting, which we're going to get into, where I split the descriptions and do all that fun stuff. So I'm going to do exactly that here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a JSON module on the end. The reason why I'm doing that is because I just want to parse the output of the AI module. So I'm going to add this as my JSON string. I'm going to go message and then content. And this is just going to make it accessible in make.com. You'll see that I get a warning here because anytime a transformer is the last module in an input, it'll just say, hey, this shouldn't really be happening. This isn't really doing anything of value to you. And then what I want to do is I'm going to, let's actually just run this once so you guys can see what the data structure looks like. So it's doing its thing. I am calling the GPT-4 API every time that I run this test, so it's costing me like a cent or two. But you'll see that after we process this, we actually end up with a relevant queries variable, and then all of the titles are basically in just an array here, which is nice. So what we would do with this information is we would iterate over this. Now, if you've never used an iterator before, use an iterator when you basically have an array of stuff, and then you want to run a new scenario, a mini scenario for every single one of them. So in my case, if I didn't use an iterator here, then I would have to work with this whole array. But if I use an iterator, I can actually do a bunch of stuff specifically for every title in this array. And so you can think of it as, if I use an iterator here, everything up until the iterator is going to run once, and then the iterator is going to run 9 more times. It's going to go through every title and then do stuff with that title. So I'll give you a quick example here. I'm going to go to the tools down here and then go to iterators and click iterator. And you'll see it's asking me for an array. The array that I'm going to use is this relevant underscore queries array. And you'll know that it's an array in make.com when it has 2 square brackets, one to the left and then one to the right. The reason why we click the array is because the array has just a giant list of the things we want to iterate over. And then the format in make.com is you always do like the highest level array, and then you stick that in. Like we wouldn't press this 1 or whatever. The formatting here confused me for quite a while, but you'd always just want to use the highest level variable in the array. So anything with that left and right square bracket should be good. Now the iterator, I believe, is a transformer as well. That's why we got that little, excuse me, that's why we got that little 1 to the top right. And you'll see now what's happening is we fed it as an input an array with a list of values. And then what happened afterwards was we turned that into a list of bundles instead. And so a bundle is just one whole scenario execution, basically. And so everything after this point is going to run per bundle. So there'll be, if I added like a Google Sheets add a row module here, then it would run once for this, another time for that, a third time for that, a fourth time for that. It would just keep on going until all of the bundles were exhausted, essentially. So what do we want to do now that we're iterating over every title? Well, now for every title, I want to extract the specific summary that's relevant to us. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use another set variables module. And I'm just going to call this specific request. Let's do that. And here's where we're going to get into like some text parsing magic. So I have the title over here in the value parameter, where it says nearly half of Americans have considered whatever. And then I'm going to go back to this testing text and just see where that is. Nearly half of America. Okay, so this is in the title section, so we don't want the title, so we want the description section. Okay, great. So you see here that the way that we need to do this is we basically need to parse this, and then we want to grab all the text from here down to here. And so then we'll have this text available to feed into AI and then create like a customized response to. You'll see it has a bunch of information we probably don't need, like the deadline. Probably going to respond to this within 7 seconds of it being posted, so that's probably not relevant. The Yahoo Finance media outlet part might be relevant. This email is relevant because this is where we're actually going to write the email back to. But basically, we need to extract this. And then we need to extract the specific part or the specific text from here to here. And so the way that we're going to do this, if you think about it logically, kind of like in make, and eventually that's going to be this. So we're going to work up to this right now. What we have to do is first we have to feed in the description that we isolated earlier, the whole long description with like 93 or whatever sections of text like this. And then we have to separate it using that title that we've extracted previously. And once we've split it using this title, we'll then have all of the summaries before and then all of the summaries after. And so what we need to do then is we need to get all of the summaries after, right? Because the after part is going to include all of this. It's basically going to be from here all the way down to the bottom of the email. And then we have to take that and then we have to split it again based off of this. And then what we want to do is we want to get the first result, because the first result will be from here to here. So if that doesn't make sense, I'm going to run this a bunch of times just so you can see how we iteratively get to the variable that we want to get to. But that's how we're going to extract this text specifically. And I sort of hope that I have at least one or two errors here. I mean, I'm not going to do anything purposefully. But if I do, then that'll hopefully allow me to walk you guys through this in a little bit more detail, especially for those of you that aren't really familiar with how this works. Okay, anyway, so well, I just got a little bit ahead of myself. What am I going to do here? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split, and then the variable that I want is descriptions. And then what I'm going to split it by is the value that came out, okay? So that's the very first thing that we're going to do. Oh, and then let me just, actually no, let me do this just so you guys can see everything at every step. And it's going to run, presumably 7, 8, or 9 times, however many titles that it extracts, and then passes through the iterator. So we're going to get to see that happen. So there you go. It ran 1 time in the iterator and then 7 times down here. So we actually split the text in 7 different places. And you'll see that just like we had before with the titles and the descriptions, we've now split it into 2 sections. We split it into the section before that title, which goes all the way down up into the summary, and we split it after. And it includes all of the information that we want, the name, the category, the blah, 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 all the way down. So that's great. That's exactly what we want. Now what we want to do is we want to grab the second value here, and then we want to split that second value by this. You can, of course, do this in separate modules if you wanted to. But in practice, you get good enough at working with this that you can usually just stick it all into one. So now I'm going to get the second response or the second result of that. So let me run that one more time and just waste all of my valuable ops. We just need to make sure we don't overwhelm the GPT-4 API. Now, in my case, I have like 1 million requests that I can make per minute because I'm part of their highest plan. But in your case, make sure that you're just not you're not rerunning this every 5 seconds, let's say. Okay, now what do we get after? Well, because we got the second result, we have only the section that we're interested in, and then it goes all the way down from there to the bottom of that email. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to separate it all. We're going to split it again, and we're going to do it by this string. And then we're just going to get the first result. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to split that again. And what I'm going to do is split it by that. Then I'm going to get, and then I'm going to get the first result. Now we're going to run this one final time, and this should work and get us the list of descriptions that we can then use to feed into another AI module to have us automatically write. So let's check the output, and it worked like a charm. We got the name of the person that requested it, the category, the email, blah, 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 blah. Now, the last thing that I want to do is, and this may seem unintuitive, but I want to feed back the title. And the reason why is because in my head, I have a feeling that if the text doesn't include the title, it'll just be a slightly lower quality. So what I'm actually going to do back here is I'm just going to write value, and then I'm going to do space. And now it's just going to take everything that I just did, all the text processing, and then it's just going to add or concatenate the title itself to the beginning of that, which should be everything that I need. And you know what? I'm also going to go in, and then I'm going to add a new line as well. So I'm going to add value, then new line, and then I'm going to add all the other information. Okay, let me just save this as a sanity check because my computer's been acting up recently. And let's see how it works. Got some French hazelnut coffee. That stuff is the bomb. Okay, Operation 7, specific request. Elevate your e-commerce, unleashing the power of Magento development services, and then categories. So this is the title of the request that we have now concatenated. And I think this is just going to be a little bit better. Now you see a lot of these queries ask for stuff like a headshot, a bio, and a high authority website or social media link for attribution purposes. So we're gonna have to find a way to put that into our AI module. But now we have everything that we need to do to actually like move forward with this. So now I'm just gonna copy this and then stick it back in. I'm gonna rename this and I'll say write customized email. And then I have to edit all of these prompts, of course, because these are the prompts from the extract relevant title section. But I have them right down here in Google Docs, so that's good. I think this is the same system prompt, so I'm not gonna worry about that. I am going to do the user prompt though. This is where the money's at. When you paste in, it has the nasty habit of just pasting all of your text in with no new lines. So if you wanna add the new lines, which I find very important for formatting and tone and professionalism, you have to hold down Shift when you do your Command V or Control V, and that'll paste without formatting. You can also right click and there should be like a paste without formatting, or maybe paste and match style in Mac, I don't know. But the user prompt that I'm gonna use now is, hey, I own 1 second copy. It's a successful AI marketing company that does over 90K a month. My name is Nick Sarayev. Here is some of my information. Don't use it unless asked. I then have a bunch of links to my socials. If I were you, I would go down every single one of these and just follow me on every platform immediately. If you don't, the whole world is at stake. You'll see how one of the things that I provided is a headshot, because I knew that a bunch of these were requesting headshots. There's my own business website, my Twitter, my Instagram, LinkedIn. If somebody asks for these directly, I just want the AI to add them in. Then, below is a request by a journalist for outreach. Write a succinct, Spartan email responding to each query if needed, be concise, and then use the following format. It's important that you give it a format and then you just like train it to use that exact format, because if you don't, then it'll just sort of wing it every time. And sometimes the quality will be good, but most times the quality will be shit. So it's better for you to walk its hand a little bit, and this is worth the additional token cost. I'm actually giving it an email template saying, hey, I own this company, a successful AI marketing company that does over $90,000 a month. Your customized responses go here. We'll be in the office for the rest of the day. If you need anything, just shout and I'll take care of it. The idea being that I'm implying that I'm around and I can help very, very quickly. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to like train this in context. And so I'm just gonna paste in a huge query here, copy this from here, and then paste this in. And this is basically like an unstructured request. And you'll see it doesn't have new lines or anything like that, but that's because new lines take some tokens, and I don't want to worry too much about adding a bunch of those just in the training example, because I just wanted to focus on the content, not the way that it's formatted. Sometimes the formatting will be a little bit different. Anyway, I paste this in, and then I give it an example of the email that I want it to write. And this is really the most important one. This is the longest one as well, because I'm just showing it, hey, here's the relationship between the input that I'll give you and the output. And what does the output say? It says hi, and then it grabs their first name, which is somewhere in here, like Pooja, I believe. I own the company, a successful AI marketing company that does over 90K a month. And then here are a bunch of answers to their specific questions that they're asking. Right? Specifically, we are seeking your input on the following questions: 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. So I'm actually going in and I'm answering these questions, which is just going to train it to basically, if there are any questions, it's gonna know that it needs to respond to them in a customized manner. Then I add a bunch of information. Most of this information was explicitly requested, so I stuck that in. And then I add in my final response. So after that, what we do is we feed in the specific request from here. And then this is longer, so my max tokens will not be 150. Why don't we go to word counter and see? 256 words. One token is equal to about 0.7 words. So 1 over 0.7 is 1.4. So 1.42 times 250 is 355. This is probably on the longer end of emails that I'm going to generate, but just to be safe, I'm going to go down here and then let's just do like 700. And then I'm going to add slightly more to the temperature because I want it to be a little bit more creative. Okay, great. So now we have the right customized email. And then just to skip ahead a little bit, I'm also going to, I don't want to run this 1,000,001 times. Okay, let's work on the email module as well. And then, yeah, okay, great. So now that I have this, I also obviously need to get the email address that I'm sending it to. If you pay close attention, you'll see that the email address is actually nested right over here in a phrase that's email : space something something at helpareporter.net. And so I can actually like extract that really easily by just creating a regex. One of my viewers made fun of me the other day for mispronouncing regex. It's really tough to do that off the top of my head, geez. Looking for that specific query. So I'm going to go back here and then I'll go to regex 101. And then I'm just going to paste in all of this text here and just try and have it extract the email address using the regex. Okay, so I'm looking for this email here, query blah, blah, blah. So, because I know how to use regex, I should be able to extract this pretty easily. Email, space. Looks like there's going to be anything here at helpareporter.net. And so this extracts this email. I think that's going to work. But just to be safe, why don't I go and put in all of the testing text and see if it extracts all of the emails that I'm looking to extract. Okay, you see that it's extracted the email address here, FIQ, whatever. This is their own internal system that they use to like route emails and stuff, so that actually looks good. What a fast regex. We're going to parse this text, and I'm just going to call this extract email. And then once I get the output of that email, which I think will work, but who knows, I'm then going to create a draft. Just selecting the wrong account here. And then I'll write it in drafts. The to email will be the email that I just extracted. And I don't know if you actually need to put a subject line. Let me see what I did before. Looks like I have a couple of email modules here. I also attached this to Stripe myself. Okay, so it looks like I just said HARO, and then I added in some social proof saying that I'm loaded, which I find works extremely well. I'm just going to paste this in as plain text because that's how it's coming out of the model. And we should also be, actually no, we don't need to do a JSON module here because the output is just plain text. So I'll go to choices and then I'll go to messages, then I'll stick the content in there. And now this should produce a bunch of drafts. So let's see how this works. In the completed system, I noticed that some of the emails as they were coming in were misformatted because HARO doesn't always stick to the same formatting. Whatever internal system they're using to manage these sorts of things is good for the most part, but there are some issues. And so I put in a few blocks, and those blocks were, if the request doesn't exist, basically, which happened, I think, 1 in every 15 or 20 times. Don't proceed with the flow, for instance. If another thing doesn't exist, then don't do that, right? Okay, let's see if we could extract the email. No, it doesn't look like we could extract the email for some reason. So that's unfortunate. Let me go down to choices and just see and make sure that the actual message was good. Hi, Nicole, I own this company. Here are my thoughts on the reasons people hold back from starting a business. This looks pretty good. So I think the actual text generation part's fine. The reason why this isn't proceeding is because I added a block to the module that said, if you don't find anything, don't keep going. And the reason why I did that for this specific case, if you remember in the previous regex videos I didn't, is because I wanted it to proceed even if I couldn't find the email. In this case, it's not proceeding because if it continues to go, then the email module will error out. And I don't really want to deal with that. So let me see why it was unable to find the specific email in question. This to me looks like it should be good. Yeah, so it should be able to find query at helpareporter.net. So maybe there's something that I did here. Or maybe I didn't, maybe it wasn't global or something like that. Oh, right, my dumbass just didn't put the text in. Okay, well that's pretty stupid. I am going to globally match this. And then I'm just going to return the first result. And then for text, I'm going to stick the email address in. And then if the module finds no matches, don't continue. And then for safety, to solve the problem that I was mentioning earlier, I'm also going to add a filter in that says request found. And I'm going to say this exists. So the only way that this can proceed and actually call my precious tokens is if a request exists. If it doesn't exist, then I just don't want to run this, because odds are, it's just sort of pointless. Okay, let's run this whole puppy from start to finish, and I think that this should work. We got our robot minions on full swing, extracting our relevant titles. And then we're going to parse the JSON from that, iterate over it, and we fed in what looks like 9 responses. And so this should function, or should run 9 times after the iterator. So it ran the first time, it found the request, and now it's generating our email. It's then going to hopefully extract, looks good. Then it's going to go in and then it's going to write that draft. So 2, we stuck the right email in there, the content is here. And the best part of all is if I go back to my own personal email and then I check the draft, I have it right over here. Hi Megan, I own this company. I'm not a certified licensed real estate banker, or lending or financial expert. I can tell you from my experience as a business owner, that blah, blah, blah. And then I also add in a bunch of my experience. So yeah, that system looks like it's chugging along nicely. I'm surprised I didn't run into more issues while building that, to be completely honest. Especially these higher level like text parsing flows where you need to put like a split and then a get and then a split and then a get. But I think because we did everything iteratively, like I actually do when I'm building these out alone, rather than just trying to do it all at once, I was able to sort of error correct along the way. The last thing that we would need to do in order to make this module, to turn this module from this scenario, from theory and turn it into like a reliable, practical business revenue generating machine, is we would have to sign up to HARO, and then we'd have to start receiving emails from HARO, and then we'd have to connect this email module to the rest of the flow. And then let me just stop this because I think it's clear that this works. And then instead of testing text, what we do is we just go down and then feed in the actual text content here. And then you can rename this from testing text to set email plain text or something. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to export this as a blueprint for all y'all. That looks pretty good. And yeah, that's how you build a helper reporter out automatic outreach system from start to finish in make.com. Don't think this video took more than maybe 45 minutes. Again, I've probably made $5,000 or $6,000, maybe $7,000 selling this system now. And it's just one that's so simple for me to set up. All I need to do now is just drag and drop the email address of the client into a couple of these folders. I need to sign up for HARO, obviously. But aside from that, yeah, that's how you do it. So you can use this to automatically generate backlinks and build a whole empire if you want to. You can also use this in a slightly different way from what I've showed you. You could write a much longer prompt, spend a lot more money customizing it to your specific experience and use case, maybe put some case studies in, do all that sort of thing. But I'll leave all that up to you. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, comments, or anything like that, leave them down below. Otherwise, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.